Example of some more features of Scratch and programming in general. So we're going to start looking at variables and then what variables can do for us. So this is a project that does basically nothing, just describe some of these things. So if we go inside here, we're going to start by looking at some variables. So what are variables? Variables are named objects in Scratch or other programming languages, and they represent a value, and you can change those values. Now in Scratch, I'm going to go down to the variable section here. I have already created a variable in this project. It's called my number. Very simple to create a variable. All you do is you just click on make a variable and give it a name. And you have these two options here for all sprites, for this sprite only. So it describes the visibility of the variable. If you only want the current sprite to use it and nobody else can see it, you can choose that. As a beginner, I highly recommend just say for all sprites, and that way any sprite in your project can see it. As far as I know, you cannot change them once you pick one or the other. And then here it is. Now you'll notice these little check marks next to the variables. If it's checked, you will see it showing up on your little stage here. If you uncheck it, then they go away. So it's a way to show and hide the variables. I'm not using my new variable, so I'm going to shut that one off. But I did create one called my number, and these variables, they can hold anything. Like they can hold numbers, they can hold strings of characters. Almost anything you can type in Scratch can go into these variables. So I made this one a number, and it's only a number because that's what I'm putting in there. So we have these different kinds of blocks. Set my number to. So that says, hey, this my number thing. Right now I'm saying set it to 5. Now right now it's a 6. So if I kind of click this to run it, it changes it to 5. If you want it to be another value, you could put any number you want in there. Clicking on the block, when that executes, it changes it, and you can see that over in the display area. So that's setting one. Now you could also use this change my number by, and it basically adds this value. So change my number by 1. So see how right now my number is 100. If I click that, it will make it 101. If you want to do a subtraction instead of an add, just make this a negative value. So change it by -1, it will decrease it. And if you look over here, you'll see that it's doing that. So that's kind of in a nutshell what they are and the different commands. And here are the shows. So I guess you can do that programmatically. You can show and hide them within your code as well. So what would you do with variables? Well, one thing you can do with them is you can test them. What is the value of a variable? If it's a certain value, maybe you want to do something. So if you go under Control, we have these blocks over here. Here's the if-then, and here's an if-then-else. So we're going to just discuss those briefly here. So let's see if I scroll this a little bit. So here is what an if looks like. So you can drag them out. And it has this little hexagon shape here. So you're going to fill those with hexagon-shaped block items, and they're under the operators, the green indicator here. And if you look at these shapes here, see how they're that weird hexagon shape, and they will fit like right in there, if I can get it there. They fit right in there. So that's the kind of thing that we're expecting. And it's doing a comparison. So the one that I just dragged in is a greater than. So you can drag a variable in there. So I'm going to go back to my variables, and you can do a test. So my new variable has nothing in it at the moment. I can show it, right? Oops. New variable has nothing there. So it defaulted to 0. So if new variable is greater than 50, then you're going to do this block of code, which right now doesn't do anything. If it doesn't satisfy this condition, if it doesn't make this condition true, it will not do what's inside there. So in this example here, it says, if my number equals 5, then say that. But what if it's not 5? Well, my number right now is 99. So my number equals 5 should fail. It should be false. So nothing should happen. So if I click this, nothing happens. But watch what happens if I change the number. If I set its value to be 5. See, now it's 5. If I run this now, it becomes true. My number is 5. That's a true statement. And then it will go and it will do that. So that's pretty cool. But what if you wanted to do a different thing depending on the value not being what you're testing on? So that's where the if then else block comes into play. So it looks a lot like the other one, except now we have this extra branch called else. So here, if my number is 5, then do that thing, else do the other thing. When this is true, it will run this block. When this isn't true, it will run the other block. So right now, if I execute this, my number up here value is 5. So it's going to do that. Well, let me change my number. So I changed it by -1, so now it's a 4. So if I go back to this if, it's saying not 5. It's going what my else branch was telling me to do. So this is a very important part of programming, testing on a variable, and doing different things depending on what you get. While we're in here, I thought I would show you a different kind of operator that Scratch has, and it's called a join. So this can help you have more interesting messages. So what a join does is it takes two values and it puts them all together. So in the example, before you pull it out, it says join apple, banana. And if you do that, it will make a string called apple banana in one thing. So if I look at now, I've taken this, my if then else, and instead of just saying high five, I'm saying hi, and you can't see it here, but there's actually a space in there. Because if you don't put a space, it will cram it right next to each other. But it's going to take that value of my number and put it together. So let me put my number back to being 5. And if I run now this fancy thing, so it looks like the same thing up here, but now I didn't hard code what the message is. The variable is what's going to show up in the message. Because if I change the value of my number, look what else is going to happen if it's not 5. Now I've got a nested join. So there's two joins, and it kind of works from the inside out. So first I'm going to join not my number. So whatever my number's value is, it's going to put there. And then it's going to take that. This outer join here is going to add the exclamation mark to it. So if I change my number again, when I go to this fancier looking one, it goes the other way. And see how it did the not? It put the value 4 in there. I'll run it again. And then the exclamation mark was ended. So it's a way to kind of dynamically change what you want your sprites to say, or if anytime you need a string to be dynamically changed, or a number or anything within the code. So I think that can be a really helpful thing. Now Scratch has a few special variables, and we're going to look at one of them today, which is the answer variable. And I'm going to go under sensing here. And ask is how you can get input from a user. So ask what's your name and wait. So when you have one of these in your code, basically what happens is Scratch is just going to sit there. And you're going to type something, and this special variable in blue, so it's a different color than the ones you create, which are kind of that orange color. This blue one is called answer. So I've got a little block set here. It says ask what's your name and wait, and then it's going to say, once you finish typing something in, it's going to use the join statement to say hello and the thing that you typed in. So it's going to ask what's your name, and now it's waiting, and while it's waiting, it has this little interface over here for you to type something in. So I'll type in my name, then hit the check mark or enter, and then it's going to take that value that was an answer and treat it like any other variable and say hello and the name of what I entered in. Just do it again real fast. And that's cool. So that way, if it's a different person, then they're going to get a different response back. So it makes it a very personalized interactive experience for a player. You can also use these not just as a say, but if you're saying, hey, enter an answer. Which way do you want to go? What branch do you want to take? And they type something in. You can put this in an if statement. So you can have if answer equals some value. You can also store answer in another variable if you wanted. So I could do a thing like set, I'm going to change my variable to whatever answer is. And that way, if you need answer again for somebody else's, another kind of query that you need, but you don't want to lose the previous answer, you can still keep it that way. It's a neat way to get information from players and do some kind of fun stuff with that. And with that, that is all that I am looking to communicate today in this little example. So try and look at it again, play around with these things, and I think you'll find you can have a lot of fun with them. Thanks so much for watching.